Welcome to today's deep dive. I am really excited you're joining us for this one because we are looking at something a little different today.
Yeah, we really are. Today's source is literally a single Wikipedia article, and it's titled List of United States Senators from Missouri.
Which I know sounds like the absolute driest source imaginable.
Completely.
I mean, you picture it and it's just columns, rows, dates, party affiliations. It looks like an accounting ledger.
Right, just a sterile formatting of, raw historical data.
Exactly. But the thing is, hidden inside that very dry data table is actually this incredible roadmap of American political chaos.
It really is.
So we are going to bypass the heavy, dense history textbooks today. Our mission is to prove to you that this simple data table is actually a treasure map.
I love that framing, a treasure map.
Yeah, because we're going to use it to uncover the human drama, the brilliant political strategy, and just the quirky trivia hidden within over 200 years of congressional records.
And distill it all down so you get those ultimate aha moments without having to read through a massive list of dates yourself.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at a list spanning more than 2 centuries, where do we even find the narrative thread?
Well, the narrative really starts with the mechanical structure of the system itself, like right at the beginning. Missouri was admitted to the Union on August 10th, 1821.
Okay.
And that date is the starting line for the entire data set. But to read this map effectively, you have to look at how the United States Senate is organized into what are called classes.
Right, which the source breaks down right at the top.
Exactly. It shows that Missouri senators belong to Class 1 and Class 3.
Which is essentially a constitutional continuity mechanism and makes sure that the entire Senate isn't up for election all at the exact same time.
Yeah, it prevents total turnover in one single election cycle.
So Class 1 and Class 3 seats operate on staggered 6-year cycles. For example, looking at the data, the next election for Missouri's Class 3 seat is coming up in 2028, while the Class 1 seat isn't contested again until 2030.
And that creates this built-in rotation where the state is almost always evaluating one of its two senators. It keeps the electorate constantly engaged with the national political landscape.
And if we look at the current delegation to kind of anchor ourselves in the present, we see that exact rotation in action.
We do. The current U.S. senators from Missouri are Josh Hawley, who is a Republican serving in the Class 1 seat since 2019.
And then Eric Schmidt, also a Republican, who took the Class 3 seat in 2023, and the data notes he was reelected in 2024.
And just to complete the modern picture, the source also lists out Missouri's current House representatives.
Right, which includes a real mix. On the Democratic side, you have Wesley Bell and Emanuel Cleaver.
And on the Republican side, you've got Ann Wagner, Bob Onder, Mark Alford, Sam Graves, Eric Burleson, and Jason Smith.
And I think we should pause here just to make something crystal clear.
Oh, definitely.
Our goal today isn't to debate modern politics or critique voting records or endorse any platforms. We are strictly impartial here.
Absolutely. We are looking at these figures purely as the latest entries in a 200-year-old historical ledger. We're just reporting the names, the parties, and the election dates exactly as they appear in the source material.
Nothing more, nothing less. But treating them strictly as historical data points immediately revealed a really fantastic piece of trivia about this modern delegation.
It really jumps right out of the columns if you pay attention to the dates.
Right. Missouri currently has a younger senior senator, Josh Hawley, and an older junior senator, Eric Schmidt.
What's fascinating here is just how rare this dynamic actually is.
Because usually you'd assume the senior senator is the older person.
Naturally, yeah. But the concept of senior and junior senators is entirely about the length of continuous service in the Senate. It has nothing to do with biological age.
So you expect the senior senator to be older, assuming they've had more time to build that tenure, but Missouri flips that expectation.
Completely on its head. And according to the source, Missouri is one of only 15 states where this age inversion currently happens.
15 states out of 50, so it's a pretty exclusive club.
It is. The others are California, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Louisiana, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, and Utah.
It's just a perfect illustration of how unpredictable political career trajectories really are. You can have someone entering the Senate relatively early in life.
While others might spend decades building massive careers in different offices, state legislatures, governorships, private sector.
Right, and by the time they finally make it to the Senate, they are the junior member, despite being older than their colleague who has just been sitting in the chamber longer.
It's a great reminder that these are real people with highly varied life paths. They aren't just program profiles taking office at a predetermined age.
So true. And those varying trajectories become even more pronounced when you look back at the historical records in this table.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer endurance of some of the names on this list is staggering. We are talking about true titans of tenure.
Yeah, let's talk about the 30-year club. Look at the very first Class 1 senator from Missouri, Thomas Hart Benton. He held that seat from August 10th, 1821, all the way to March 3rd, 1851.
30 years of continuous service.
But what makes his tenure so compelling isn't just the length of time. It's the evolution happening within his own profile over those 3 decades.
Right, the party labels.
Exactly. The data shows he started as a Democratic Republican, then his label shifted to a Jacksonian, and eventually he is listed simply as a Democratic senator.
His personal political identity evolved in real time alongside the birth of the modern American party system. And he was sitting in the exact same chair in Washington the entire time.
And he isn't even the longest-serving senator on the list.
No, that title goes to Francis Cockrell. He occupied the Class 1 seat from 1875 to 1905.
Just think about the immensity of societal change during that specific 30-year run. The nation moved through the Reconstruction era, the explosion of the Industrial Revolution, right into the dawn of the 20th century.
And Missouri had the exact same person representing them in that specific seat the entire time.
It really highlights how incredibly stable the Senate was designed to be. Those 6-year terms and the lack of term limits can create these massive monolithic blocks of time governed by single individuals.
It's a system built for continuity.
It is, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you scroll up from Francis Cockrell's incredibly stable run and you look at the 1860s, the timeline of senators completely fractures.
It shatters.
The neat, orderly list of long terms just breaks into absolute chaos.
The 1860 section of this table is arguably the most dramatic data visualization in the entire source.
Yeah.
The American Civil War fundamentally broke the established political order.
Yeah.
And you don't need a heavy history textbook to understand the severity of it.
Yeah.
You just need to look at the dates in office and the electoral history notes in this one table.
Let's look at the raw facts from the text. In the early 1860s, Trustin Polk is in the Class 1 seat and Waldo Johnson is in the Class 3 seat. Both are listed as Democrats. Both of their terms end abruptly in January 1862. And the reason listed in the electoral history column isn't a lost election, a retirement, or an illness.
No.
The text explicitly states they were expelled for supporting the Confederacy in the American Civil War.
The senior and the junior senator from a deeply divided border state ousted from the United States Senate within days of each other.
Both formally expelled in 1862.
It's a stunning, catastrophic historical event compressed into a tiny notation on a Wikipedia table. Missouri was suddenly left entirely unrepresented in the Senate, right in the middle of the greatest existential crisis in American history.
And the scramble to fill those vacant seats is just as wild to read.
It is.
New names suddenly populate the ledger with incredibly short tenures. John B. Henderson is appointed to continue Polk's term. Robert Wilson is appointed to continue Johnson's term.
But the true story isn't just the turnover, it's what happens in the political party's column during this specific window.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the shifting party affiliations listed in the 1860s tell the entire story of a state tearing itself apart.
Because prior to the Civil War, you see standard established parties. Democratic, Whig, Jacksonian.
But suddenly the labels shatter into highly specific micro-factions.
Exactly. John B. Henderson is initially listed as Union, then his label changes to Emancipation. Robert Wilson is also listed as Union. Then you have B. Gratz Brown, who is elected a bit later to finish out Waldo Johnson's fractured term.
And his party is listed as Radical Union.
Radical Union. I mean, these changing labels reveal the total collapse of the traditional two-party system in Missouri at that time.
The old platforms were entirely irrelevant in the face of secession and slavery. Politicians had to form new, localized battle lines just to keep the machinery of government functioning.
It's amazing. Without reading a single narrative paragraph about the Civil War, you can deduce the violent ideological shifts happening on the ground simply by watching the party labels morph from Union to Emancipation to Radical Union in the span of just a few short years.
It's like reading the rings of an old tree to see exactly when a forest fire swept through.
That is a great analogy. The data gets all scrunched up, the terms are interrupted, the labels change drastically.
And then as you move into the 1870s, the rings space out again.
The terminology stabilizes back into recognizable Republican and Democratic labels, and the terms stretch back out to the standard 6 years.
And that visual stabilization brings us to another highly revealing aspect of the ledger. The Senate is widely considered one of the highest offices in the land. But this list proves it isn't always the final destination.
No, it really isn't. The various reasons these individuals leave office provide incredible insight into political ambition, legal maneuvering, and personal strategy.
The electoral notes are full of unexpected stepping stones. A prime example is Harry S. Truman.
Right, he served in the Class 1 seat from 1935 to 1945. But his tenure ends because, as the note casually states, resigned to become U.S. Vice President.
From the perspective of this specific Missouri ledger, the elevation of the 33rd President of the United States was just a vacancy that had to be filled.
Just a blank row that needed an appointee.
Exactly. But Truman is the most recognizable example of upward mobility. Others left for entirely different branches of government.
Like Charles D. Drake.
Yes. Drake, a Republican in the Class 3 seat, resigned in December 1870. His electoral note reads, resigned to become Chief Justice of the U.S. Court of Claims.
He willingly gave up a powerful, highly visible legislative seat for a quieter, lifetime appointment in the federal judiciary.
It's a massive career pivot, just tucked into a footnote.
But I think the most brilliant resignation on this entire list happens much later. It is an absolute masterclass in Senate mechanics. I'm talking about Thomas Eagleton in the late 1980s.
Oh, the Eagleton maneuver in 1987. That is the perfect demonstration of how insider rules dictate national influence.
Let's lay this out. Thomas Eagleton was a Democrat who served multiple terms. He was elected in 1968, 1970, and re-elected throughout the 70s and 80s. But the text for his departure contains this apparent contradiction.
It says he retired, then resigned early to give his successor preferential seniority.
How do you retire but also resign early?
It was a calculated strategic sacrifice. In the United States Senate, seniority is the currency of power. It dictates committee assignments, physical office space, and your overall influence in drafting legislation.
So by resigning his seat just days before his term was officially scheduled to end, Eagleton purposefully created a technical vacancy in the Senate,
which allowed his elected successor, Kit Bond, to be appointed and sworn into that vacant seat slightly ahead of the rest of the incoming freshman class of senators from other states.
Eagleton artificially bumped his successor to the front of the line.
Exactly.
And what makes it so striking is that Kit Bond was a Republican. Eagleton, a Democrat, handed a massive institutional advantage to a member of the opposing party.
State loyalty and maximizing Missouri's power in the chamber entirely trumped partisan lines in that specific moment.
It reveals a profound level of institutional awareness. We often assume politicians cling to power until the absolute last possible second.
But here is raw data showing a senator voluntarily relinquishing power early to manipulate the internal mechanics of the Senate for the long-term benefit of his home state.
It's brilliant. So we've seen resignations for the White House, resignations for the judicial branch, and resignations for strategic seniority. But moving down the timeline into the early 2000s, there is one succession in the Class 1 seat that is genuinely unprecedented.
The timeline of Jean Carnahan.
Yes.
Her tenure was exceptionally brief. She served from January 3, 2001 to November 23, 2002. But the circumstances surrounding her appointment are among the most extraordinary in American political history.
The note in the electoral history column reads, appointed to begin the term of her husband, Mel Carnahan, who was posthumously elected in 2000.
Her husband passed away before the election could take place, but his name remained on the ballot. And the voters of Missouri still chose him over the living incumbent.
It is an incredible legal and democratic anomaly.
From an analytical perspective, it forces us to look at how a strict constitutional system handles a profound moment of collective state mourning.
Right.
The electorate made a definitive, undeniable choice at the ballot box, despite the tragedy. The state government then had to navigate a way to honor that democratic mandate while adhering to the rigid rules of Senate succession.
Which dictate that a deceased person cannot hold office.
Right. So the governor appointed the widow, Jean Carnahan, to step into the seat her husband had won.
She was elevated into the United States Senate entirely by tragedy and an unprecedented public mandate, serving until a special election was held in 2002 to fill the remainder of the term.
It's a powerful story.
It really is. So let's bring this back to you, the listener. What does this all mean? Why care about this list? Why does diving into a Wikipedia list of dates and political affiliations matter to you, listening to this right now?
That is the core question.
It matters because every single name, every interrupted term, and every vacant slot on this spreadsheet represents real-world strategy, national crisis, and raw human ambition.
We started with what appeared to be the driest possible data.
It's just rows and columns, but by reading between the columns, we found a state tearing itself apart during the Civil War. We found a senator playing an intricate game of institutional chess to give his state an edge. We found a grieving family navigating a posthumous Democratic mandate.
It proves that behind every mundane government record is a rich, chaotic story of how our institutions actually operate under pressure.
Exactly.
By tracking just 2 Senate seats, Class 1 and Class 3, over the course of 2 centuries, we have effectively watched the entire evolution of the American political landscape.
The data allowed us to watch the party systems morph right before our eyes, shifting from Democratic Republicans to Jacksonians to Whigs.
Fracturing into emancipation and radical union factions in the 1860s, briefly experimenting with liberal Republicans in the 1870s.
Before finally hardening into the modern dichotomy of Democrats and Republicans we recognize today.
It's the entire American story, played out in the microclimate of one state's congressional delegation. And this raises an important question about how we consume history. We are conditioned to think of history as grand, sweeping narratives delivered from high-altitude perspectives, textbooks, documentaries. But the truth is, the raw data of our democracy is meticulously recorded in local ledgers, in county clerk offices, and in state delegation lists.
The most dramatic shifts in our society are hiding in plain sight within the driest administrative records.
Always.
Which brings me to a final thought for you to mull over today. We just spent this time unearthing the drama, the shifting ideologies, the calculated resignations, and the unprecedented tragedies hidden within a simple list of names from Missouri.
A single table.
So if a simple list of names from one single state can reflect the entire shifting landscape of American history, its wars, its tragedies, its legal loopholes, what hidden historical dramas might be lurking in the dry, local election records of your own hometown?
That's a great question. Who were the people who sat in your local mayor's office during the 1860s or the 1940s?
What forgotten scandals, quiet strategic maneuvers, or localized microfactions are sitting in an archive right now, just waiting for someone to finally read between the lines? Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the archives today. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we will catch you next time on The Deep Dive.